everyone! My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we're gonna have a little conversation about if you can be too old or too young to start your journey in the BDSM world. So recently, Morgan Thorne did a video where she talked about tips for people under 35 entering into the kink community and lifestyle. And I think that was a really great video, totally worth watching. I will link to it down below, but I wanted to expand on that conversation because from what I've gotten from questions and comments over the years is basically, regardless of how old you are, you're probably thinking, am I to this or to that to join the kink scene? Have I missed my window, or has my window not arrived yet? And so, yeah, I think I just want to have a conversation about this because it can be so nerve-wracking to decide, do I actually want to try this thing or not? So firstly, I want to address the people that have concerns that they're too old to join the BDSM lifestyle, because I think if you're going off of what you see in porn or media or Google searches or Tumblr or like TikTok probably even, if you're going off of that, you might be left with the impression that everyone in BDSM is this like super hot model level 20 to 30-year-old, maybe like mid-30s if you're a dom, or if you're a guy you're allowed to be a little bit older but not by much, because like by 35 you're basically in the grave according to these Google images. And so you get this impression that like, oh my gosh, like everyone who's doing this is like a young man's game. You know, how am I gonna do these really intense scenes if I have arthritis, or if I have a walker, or if I'm in a wheelchair, if I like whatever it is? How am I going to do this because I can't see any representation of people like me? And I want to do a little bit of a reality check, because I don't think people, obviously, if you haven't been to a party or to an event, you would have no way of knowing this. But I like to make the analogy that the BDSM scene is a cross-section of our whole society, right? All different types of people do BDSM. People that are religious, people that are atheists, people that are poly, people that are monogamous, everyone across the whole spectrum in terms of age, attractiveness, everything else. Lots and lots of different people are kinky, which I find very, very interesting and also hopeful, because chances are, no matter where you are, there are going to be people like you. And in reality, I would say, if I could picture in my mind the most average BDSM event possible with like the most average people, that like what I would expect to be the most typical night anywhere, it would be a general dungeon party where the average age is like 40 to 55-ish. The BDSM community, for the most part, actually, depending on where you live, tends to skew a little bit older. And the reason for that is, you know, typically a lot of people, you know, especially, you know, a couple generations ago, they had no way to discover what BDSM even was until they were a little bit more mature in life. They had, you know, gotten married, they'd maybe raised kids, they were more established in their career, and maybe they really just spent, even if they knew about it, they spent their 20s and 30s raising kids or going to school or getting ahead in their career, and they couldn't spend time wondering, okay, how do we add in kink on top of everything else that we're doing? It kind of just fell by the wayside. So a lot of people don't really have the opportunity or the means to start doing BDSM until they're, you know, a little bit older than what the Tumblr pictures would have you believe is the average. So don't worry, people that are definitely like above 30 do BDSM. It's very much a thing that happens. Now, I would say that these days that younger people do have more access to BDSM in terms of like the language and knowing what it even is earlier than people that are older would have, which is why there's kind of this disparity of like, there's a bunch of older people, but a bunch of younger people as well. There's kind of like this dip in the middle, but also it's because people that are in their like late 20s and like early to mid 30s, that's the period of time where people like settle down. Hate that phrase. They settle down and they focus on raising kids. And you know, if you have an infant, it might be kind of difficult to be like, hey, I want to go to the BDSM party, can you watch my infant? Like, you know, not generally a thing that a lot of people do. So, you know, for older people, there's very, very much a space for that and a place for that. I would say the average is more skewed towards older. And even depending on what communities you're in, like if you're more part of leather culture, for example, that definitely skews older. That's more like 50s and 60s even, I would say, is more the leather community. And the whole time I've been in the kink scene, even when I was going to school still and I was in a university town and I was going to that dungeon, there were still older people there. There were still people, I think the oldest person I saw at like my first couple parties was like mid to late 70s. And that guy, listen, he was really into some super intense CBT and stuff, and he found a way, okay? So, you will have to make modifications, I think, for, depending on what your comfort level is in terms of, like, nudity, or even what kind of play feels possible to you now that you're maybe older, and again, maybe you have, like, arthritis, or you have certain mobility needs, or on certain medications. That's all part of the process and negotiation. Don't worry, that's totally a normal thing to have to account for as part of doing kink. But what I would say is, don't let the fact that you feel old or feel too old get in the way of having fun, right? Because you can lament all that you want, that, I wish I could have done this when I was like in my 20s. I wish I would have known about this earlier. I wish I would have told my wife I wanted this earlier. You can lament that all that you want. But you're at where you're at right now in your life. And you can either choose to sort of lament the fact that you couldn't do this for 10 or 20 years. Or you can just choose you can choose to focus on the now. You can choose to embrace the fact that you get to do this now in your life, and you get 10, 20, 30, 40 years now to have it be part of your life. And I would actually say, for older people, don't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I couldn't do this when I was like 25. There's something that Milena Williams-Haas says when she gives presentations about her journey into being a slave. And this is not just for people who are slaves, but she talks about how, she's kind of angry at the world at one point where she's like, why couldn't I have a master sooner? Why could I not have had this relationship sooner? Why did I spend all that time wondering if I was really a submissive, wondering if I was really a slave, and just desperately searching for this thing I couldn't find? Why were you so cruel to me, universe, that I couldn't have this sooner? And the universe is like, were you ready then? Were you ready when you were addicted? Were you ready when you were still in treatment? Were you ready when you this, that, and the other? Were you ready when you were living out of your car? And now I'm kind of getting away from Milena's like particular situation. But whatever it is, you might not have been ready when you were younger to have BDSM in your life. You might have been very career focused. You might have been struggling with addiction. You might have had really bad self-esteem problems. You might have had like things in your way that would have made it very difficult for you to have a happy and healthy BDSM relationship, even if you had the opportunity to have one. And so it's kind of, it's sort of maybe a misuse of the phrase, but sort of like when the student is ready, the master appears. Very sort of fortune cookie type shit to say about this. But sometimes you're just not ready when you're younger, and you have to have that maturity before you're really ready to embark on this. And maybe you needed those years to deprogram yourself from, maybe a Christian upbringing that was really anti-sex and anti-masturbation, and you had to spend 10 years getting comfortable with like the kinds of things that you mentally were into, so that's all part of the process. It's very normal, very understandable. And also I would say, in a lot of cases, it can be an advantage, because yes, it might be nice to get into BDSM when you're younger and you have so much more time to explore things and to find relationships and really understand what you want. But also when you are coming into the scene with a level of maturity behind you, maybe a really long, happy, successful relationship, maybe you've been married for 20 years and you're getting into this together, which is just so beautiful, you can have like advantages from that. You come in with the maturity and the understanding that comes with age that younger people are just not going to have. You have the security of like maybe a more stable career. You have the security of just having maybe a longer term relationship. You just know more shit basically, and you know more about yourself, and you tend to be, I think, more, from my observation, you tend to be more in a place where you're like, I really want this in my life, and I'm not taking any more bullshit anymore, and I'm just going to go ahead and get what I want. And I think that can be really tough to do when you're younger and you have that confidence, you have that self-knowledge. And in the same way that you can kind of explore yourself when you're younger in BDSM, you probably also did that when you were that same age range, But now you can apply that to BDSM. You maybe know what you're into because you've been reading about it and fantasizing about it for years and years. And it's not the same thing as getting to have actual experience, but you're not coming in as a complete blank slate necessarily either. And if you are, that's also totally fine. But yeah, it's just don't overlook the benefits of coming into BDSM with maturity, maybe some more humility, because things 20-year-old male doms will say and do sometimes really just, it sets them back, okay? And so sometimes coming into the scene as like a 40-year-old or 50-year-old, 60-year-old dom might feel more difficult in terms of like finding partners, but I feel like you're also a little bit less likely to like shove your foot in your mouth and do some really just egotistical, self-centered, like just younger guy shit if you're a younger male dominant and you're, you know, trying to find your footing. You might be more liable to just sort of, you know, just act in ways that are not really conducive to being a dom and not being able to figure that out because you don't have the maturity yet to really know that. But also if you're a female dominant, oh my gosh, older female dominants, they've got something special. Let me tell you, there's a lot of people, a lot of male submissives think they're only attracted to younger female dominants and they like that youth, but then they have an experience with an older female dominant and it's like, there's no comparing it, okay? Mature like fine wine. That is my opinion, especially of all dominants, but also of female dominants in particular, because I know there can be a lot of insecurity about like, oh, I'm past my prime. You know, men only want women that are like, you know, as young as possible. Like, I totally get that. But in reality, there's a special place in the community's heart for older female dominants. Like, y'all got your shit figured out for the most part, usually. You know, I don't want to stereotype too much, but there's more likelihood you're going to have your shit figured out. You're not going to take any bullshit from anyone. You know what you want. You're going to get it. And you just have that maturity, that confidence, that skill set that is just so invaluable that you can only really get from becoming older and not necessarily just because you knew about BDSM. So, yeah, anyways, being older, the point is that being older is not a bad thing. It can be a benefit. And it can be an advantage to your experience doing kink. And so, you know, don't feel bad. Don't put yourself down because, oh, I didn't know about this for so long. Or didn't think I could do this for so long. Just focus on having a positive experience now. And there's not really a TNG equivalent for older people. So TNG is like the next generation. That's for people 35 and under. There's not really an equivalent of that for people that are in the older age bracket that I'm aware of, though there could definitely be. But if you're kind of looking more into like the leather community or into more general events, for the most part, the people running the events, the main people who go to them are all in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So you're not going to have any trouble finding company there, even if you're in a college town. I would know. I saw a lot of older people that were in the kink scene. They were very much the pillars of that community. So let me kind of go in reverse now and talk about younger people in the kink scene. So there is an age that's too young, and depending on where you live, that could either be 18 or 21. So in, I think like Utah, maybe Nevada, maybe a couple other places, you're not allowed to do or go to like adult-oriented events until like 2021. So it might actually be a little bit older in some places, but the bare minimum age is definitely 18. So if you are somebody that is, and I know from my analytics, like less than 0.5% of all of my viewers ever on all of my videos are people under the age of 17, from like 13 to 17. I don't have any kids watching my videos, for the record. Nobody under the age of 13 is watching my videos. Thank fucking God. But I you know, people that are in that kind of younger age bracket. If you are a teenager, if you're just maybe going to college now for the first time, if you're getting ready for that, you know, I would say focus on enjoying being a teenager while it lasts, because adult responsibilities can kind of suck, and going to school will really take up a lot of your time, at least if you were like me. So focus on like enjoying the rest of your childhood years and kind of, you know, getting to have that experience. But I can understand why it's frustrating when you're younger, of like, I really want to do this thing, but I'm being told I can't do it. And just understand that that does not come from a place, and some people can be a little bit like, they use these days, but for the most part, people that are saying, hey, you got to be at least 18 to do this, are looking out for your own best interest, because doing BDSM is really complicated. It can have a lot of impacts on you mentally and emotionally, that when you're also dealing with navigating the teenage years and kind of transitioning into adulthood and understanding those more complicated relationships to your emotions and to other people, adding BDSM onto that can just be even more difficult. There are a lot of people that use BDSM as a shield to try and get to like vulnerable people, and certainly teenagers are a vulnerable group when it comes to predation by people that want to be abusive pieces of shit. So it's really for your own best interest if you wait until you're an adult to participate in BDSM. I think there are ways that you could potentially learn in an age-appropriate manner about BDSM. There are places like Scarleteen and other websites that are ran by professionals that can help you learn more about your sexuality and your orientation and your interests in a way that is controlled and is an environment that is ran, again, I cannot emphasize this enough, by professionals. I really think there has to be a professional separation between people that are learning about kink that are younger and people that are giving that information. I think it's very, very dicey to be like, oh, find a BDSM mentor, find an older member of the community that can kind of guide you. And I think, I get the mentality if we're kind of looking at, let's say, two gay men or two like lesbians or something, and it's a relationship between like a younger gay man and an older gay man that kind of has this mentorship role of navigating like coming out, talking to your family, what does it even mean to like find love in relationships in a gay context versus the only option you've been presented with, which is the heterosexual one. And same thing with lesbians as well. I think there's certainly mentorship from that angle I get, and I think people try to transpose that onto BDSM, but I don't really think it works because like mentorship and training and stuff, even when you are an adult in a kink space, is dicey at best, let's say, because the people that are the best at being mentors are the least available, and it tends to draw people in that are looking for more power and influence that might want to, or even unintentionally, I guess, misuse that power and influence they have on somebody who's like a mentee or a trainee that they're taking care of. So, I think there's more sort of ways to either talk to a professional or go to websites that are like catered to teenagers that can talk about things like this. You can also read books as well, tons of books about things like sexuality and navigating relationships that you can check out from like a local library. I would more use kind of your remaining teenage years if you're like 16, 17. By the way, I think this should be like, if you want to educate yourself on this, I think like 16, 17 is a good time to start that. Younger, people that are 10, 11, 12, if they kind of know about sex already, if they know about masturbation, they might already have BDSM fantasies, but I don't even think that necessarily reading about it, I don't know, I'm not like a child psychologist. I'm going to leave that decision to the professionals on that one. So I'm going to not even comment on that. But if you're like older teenager about to be an adult and you want to make sure that you have a solid basis for when you're getting into BDSM, I really think that learning about like healthy communication relationships, how to set boundaries, how to know what it is that you want, learning more about like accurately about things like sex and your body, because chances are if you're in the US, your sex ed was fucking terrible and is terrible. And so you're going to want to create that basis of like, okay, how do I know what I want? How do I talk about it? How do I know if I'm with someone who is going to respect my boundaries or not, or listen to my no or to my yes? And I think that's really going to set you up for success and give you the confidence you need going into the scene, so okay, I'm equipped, I have that knowledge, I know what I want in terms of like I can navigate saying yes and no and having that confidence, especially around, people that might be older that I might want to try and impress. And I think that is something that people kind of overlook. I think as far as like kink education, there's not any particular books I would recommend for that, but there are definitely more. There's like Violet Blue's like Fetish Sex, which talks about like different types of kinks and fetishes. That might be kind of if you're kind of more thinking in terms of like I may have a fetish that I don't really know how to deal with, and I've been having these like obsessive thoughts about, high heels or stockings or something since I was like 12 or 13. That might be a helpful book for you to read. But there's not really anything else I'd recommend, but like generally, reading things online, reading blog posts, reading books, and something in a way where you can consume information without interacting with adults. That's really the best way to learn. And just remember, you're not going to learn everything, immediately as a teenager. That's totally fine. And then you have a basis again to start with when you do start your exploration and really do get to start taking like classes and things like that. And I think that will really be the most beneficial thing that you can do. You know? Now, if you are 18, you're in that kind of like 18 to 22-year-old demographic, you're college age, you're kind of getting out on your own for the first time as an adult, definitely you can do BDSM. Again, depending on where you live, maybe 18, 20, 21, but you can definitely get out into actually doing BDSM and going to play parties. And it might seem really overwhelming because you might not know what to expect. Everyone seems a lot older. And, you know, for that, I really recommend watching Morgan Thorne's video that she did on advice for people that are under 35 entering into BDSM. Because I think sort of the main mistakes that people make getting into BDSM at a younger age is they try to do everything all at once, all the time, and they burn themselves out. They don't have the maturity / confidence yet to be able to say no or negotiate / they're too impatient to do that. Or they look at every interaction with someone as a way to get sex or get to a BDSM relationship. And so to solve those problems, I recommend taking a measured approach. I know it's super hard, it's so exciting, but listen to me, please. I am your older sister. I'm giving you advice, okay? Let me help you. Learn from my mistakes. Although, to be fair, I didn't really make this mistake because I didn't get into BDSM until I was 21. But I would really say, just know that you have your whole adult life ahead of you to do BDSM and to explore things. Take your time. Don't necessarily go to parties every single time to play a bunch. Go, watch, learn from other people. I wouldn't have your first time going to a dungeon be the first time that you also play. Watch, observe what other people are doing, learn what the norms are, and just be cautious, okay? Especially because you're 18 or 19, 20, whatever else. If you are a younger female submissive, especially, but this goes across the board for everyone, that is definitely an age range where you have to be very aware that when you're also new, there are going to be certain, especially male dominants, that are very likely to be like, hey, I can mold the submissive into being whatever I want. And that's not by any means the majority of the scene, but I feel like every community has one guy who's like that. And he hasn't done anything enough to get banned, but he's there, he's kind of creepy, and he's kind of looking for all the new people, and is like, ooh, have I found my real true submissive yet? And so look out for people like that and just be really cautious and just take your time. And that is why I recommend not looking at every interaction as like a way to get a relationship or a way to get sex, because I think instead it's really important to make friends. And I know it might seem weird to make friends with people who are like, oh my God, they're 30 and I'm 20. We totally have nothing in common. And I would say because you're both into kink, and sorry, that was my water bottle, by the way, for the record, that I just knocked over. It's fine though. But I would say that you can make friends with people that are definitely, you know, older than what you would be used to from being in school, where it's like, oh my God, I'm a senior and they're a freshman and we're so different. Like once you get into adulthood, the maturity gap very much blurs a bit, and like 20 versus 25 is not nearly as different as like 14 versus 18. So just keep that in mind. Make friends with people. Don't treat every interaction as a way to get something from other people, because when you are just making friends, you're going to have a better time. I promise. You're going to have more opportunities for people to like introduce you to people that maybe you are compatible with, and they're going to help you navigate those kind of like beginner moments of like, is this person safe or not? How do I vet someone? What do I need to do for aftercare? They're going to be able to be there to be your support, and having that support is so important to having a good first experience. And also, I want to say that when you're newer to kink, regardless of your age, I really think focusing on education when you're newer is so important and so helpful. And of course, I'm biased because I do talk about BDSM and do education as my full-time job, but I really think that something that makes or breaks like having a positive experience in BDSM is, did you know what the fuck was happening before you did it? Like, did you know really what to expect or what was going on? And you know, you can, especially if you're with an existing partner, you can have more of a fun time than otherwise if if you're just trying things and kind of seeing what works. But I think that education is so important, because that's how you're going to learn the skills and techniques that you need to know to be safe and have a fun time and talk to your partner about stuff and just learn the terminology, kind of know from other people what to expect and what their journeys were as well. And that's also something about like making friends that's good, is you get to learn from their experience about what did they do when they were new, what would they do differently, and what advice would they give. And generally speaking, I think this community is one that is very accepting and welcoming and wants people to have a good time, wants people to stick around. And people love giving advice. They love taking on that role of taking people under their wing and being like, hey, you know, I was new like you before. And you know, from the very first time that I was ever at a BDSM convention, I was like maybe 22. I was always the youngest person in the room, but everyone I interacted with, regardless of how old they were, always treated me with respect and kindness, and they were genuinely interested in me as a person and were just happy that I was there and wanted to educate myself and learn more. And so it can feel uncomfortable maybe a little bit to be around older people in a kink setting, especially if your kink is more sexual in nature. But I think at the same time, you should definitely look for educational opportunities, but also, you know, don't be scared of older people because they're older. Like, it's not them being older that makes them like scary or dangerous. It's how they treat you and how they treat your autonomy. That is the important factor. Like, do they treat you as a lollipop machine, or do they treat you as a full adult human being that has their own autonomy and is just there to also partake in this shared hobby or lifestyle? So you just got to be careful about, you know, the people you interact with, but also like don't say no to opportunities at the same time. Be open to education, be open to learning, be humble, especially if you're a newer male dominant. You don't have to go in, you know, guns blazing, being like, I'm the hottest shit, I'm king of fuck mountain, I'm gonna do literally everything I want to do, everyone's gonna be my slave and listen to me. Like, humility actually goes a much farther way for being a good dominant and leaving a good first impression than like acting like some kind of unrepentant asshole. So just keep that in mind, especially when you are a newer male submissive. You know, some people are going to treat you with a level of suspicion, I'd say, about like, what's their intention? What are they doing? Can I trust them? And, you know, you just got to show that you're really there to be part of the community and not just to like use people or find sex or to like meet the freaky chicks who will do anything. You got to really show up and be there, go to munches, volunteer, go to the dungeon regularly. Don't just go there to play, but also to talk to people and meet people and just like let people know that you're like a full human being and not just like a sex fiend. That's my advice. So yeah, to kind of summarize everything I've said so far, you can be any age and do BDSM, you know, above 18, right? It's never too late to start. It's never too early to start once you're an adult. It's about getting out there and starting your experience and just having an open mind and having the confidence to be able to get out there and do it is such an important step. And, you know, if you're there, if you're on the edge of like, should I do this, should I not? Just have the confidence to try it once and go to a party, go to a munch, see how it is. It might not be for you, but you never know until you try. And I don't want people to live with regret because, you know, maybe when they were younger, they thought they wanted to do it, but they were afraid of being judged, or they didn't know if they would be kinky enough. And so they never tried it. And then they're like 50 or 60 and are wishing, wow, I wish I would have tried this when I was younger, and they never got to. So take advantage of the opportunities where they present themselves. Be humble, have confidence, learn from others, and you're going to have a good time, okay? That's really the long and short of it. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Again, Morgan Thorne's video will be linked down below. I would love to know from you all, do you have any advice for people that want to get into the scene as a newer, younger person or a newer, older person? If that was you, what was your experience like? What would you do differently? I would love to know from all of you because I think all of us just have different paths for getting into kink. I think it's really important to know that the kink experience is not just one thing, and we all kind of find it at different times, and you know, that's important to account for as well. So yeah, all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, if you have not already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you really enjoy this, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.